I ask myself, am I sending it to this person because I want them to go back to being nice to me and like all of that? Or am I sending it because I genuinely am sending it because this is how our, the foundation of our friendship? And if it's the former, I don't do it. I'm like, you know what? I set a boundary for a reason and stick to it until there's a big enough sign that it should shift.
This is Get Unstuck Podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs who prioritize their life first, business second. I'm Mutita Panmuk, your host, who dedicates my life to designing and building a business that supports lifestyle. We will learn together from entrepreneurs around the world how they overcome their life challenges, their business obstacles, and yet still get unstuck from the hamster wheel of burying themselves into their business. Because time is the number one commodity in the world that you cannot get back once it's gone. So let's shorten the learning curve and see how can we prioritize better. Let's get unstuck. Hi, Get Unstuck Nation. Our guest today, NoorJehan. She is a Group Executive Vice President Brand Strategist at Area 23, a Sport Illustrated Swim Search Finalist, and a young women's empowerment advocate. She has made it her mission to get women excited about the prospect of falling on their faces over and over, if it means that they are making their one life on this earth count. So today, Get Unstuck Nation, let's talk about how can we live the life that's worth living. So please welcome NoorJehan to Get Unstuck podcast today. So hi, NoorJehan. Thank you so much for joining Get Unstuck podcast today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, Mutita.
So,
and hey, Unstuck Nation.
Yeah, we are going to dive deep on this topic. And I think that is so interesting because we not really talk about how we growing up and how we elope, actually, how we become until today, that how we choose to live our life this day, which is so questioning, right? But how you started to interested in this topic?
I think, empowering women and joining you on conversations about getting unstuck, it all started because I think I realized after I had experienced for the first time in my life this feeling of contentment, I looked back and I realized that the problem so many of us women are facing is that too many of us consider contentment a luxury that we don't deserve. And I only realized that in looking back, because once I had attained this feeling of contentment, I looked back and I thought, why did I think I didn't deserve this? And I want not just to empower women, but I want to make sure women understand that I truly believe society has normalized discontent in women. But it's actually contentment that is our birthright. That's your rite of passage as you get older. It shouldn't be the other way around. And how do we get there? And how do we exchange conversations about that? That's really what drives me to empower women, because you can empower women in a lot of ways about building your career and being multifaceted. But I just want to remind women that contentment is your birthright. And there is a way to get there. And I'm speaking from experience. So that's why I feel more excited about sharing that.
Do you think since when we get started to feel discontentment in our life, when it gets started?
It's such a great question. I know you and I talked about this, and I just said that I think society normalizes discontent. So it starts for us as we, age from girls to young girls to teens to women, like the transition of, with every year we're getting older, we're getting more discontent. But I don't think it's because of us as people, but it's like society's expectation on women. And if you start vocalizing, this is, I think, where it starts. So I'll answer your question more directly. For example, when you have big choices to make, a choice is, I'm going to go to college. Someone else chooses a different path. The normal path is potentially, especially for us, right, children of immigrants, and you go to college. But if one person in our friend group said, I'm not going to go to college, I want to pursue my acting career, I want to, pursue this startup business, and I can do it through a vocational training, I don't need a 4-year college degree. What happens? Suddenly, the rest of the friend group starts chattering, starts talking. Why on earth would Jane do that? What is she thinking? How could she decide to do that? How could she possibly do that? Then Jane has another choice. Does she go follow her, path? Or does she fall in step with the rest of the group? And I think we have so many choices like that. And we constantly are making them. And I feel like what I did is I didn't realize that I was making them based on acceptance by a group versus contentment for myself. So acceptance by society or my friend group versus contentment for myself. Because the discontent, they bond over that. So say Jane did go and decide to follow her gut instinct and pursue her, startup career through vocational training, and she becomes wildly successful. She might feel that journey was lonely. It was full of a lot of resentment from other people, calling her selfish for doing that and not, falling in step with taking care of her children or her partner. And then everyone else is bonding. Everyone else has a friend group. Everyone else has social support because we're all bonding over the discontent we feel because we didn't go pursue our path. I think it's a vicious cycle, Mutita, and I really want us to break that. But I think it starts young when we start having to make these decisions that are societal decisions.
It's like, do you like me or you don't like me? Are you the same as me or you don't the same as me?
Yes. Yes.
How can we live together better even though we are not agree in the same way, right?
Yeah. And I think that's where contentment comes in, because when you feel content, it's this overwhelming feeling, I believe, of being excited for other people. So like the way I look at our journeys, and this is how I think about it, we start, making mistakes. That's what getting older is about. You make mistakes, you make missteps. And with every misstep, somehow for women, we're thinking, oh, okay, well, contentment is a luxury I don't deserve. I've screwed up so much. I've messed up. So now suddenly working hard, getting those degrees, getting a responsible job, it's like a penance we feel like we owe for our missteps or for our mistakes. And if we don't do that, then society is not going, our friend group won't, accept us. But if you think about a movie, if you think about every movie is a hero's journey, and that protagonist, you don't necessarily like her in the beginning. She's flawed. But if you think about your favorite movie, Mutita, and that character, were you rooting for her by the end of the movie? And most people will say yes, because that's how screenplays are written. You have a flawed hero or heroine, but she goes on a journey, and by the end, you are rooting for her as the viewer. So I think of that and I go, wow, like we are so hard on ourselves thinking we don't deserve contentment because of our flaws, because of our missteps or our mistakes. But if you think about a movie, we root for those main characters, no matter how flawed they are, because they're going on a journey. So a journey in a movie is 3 acts. At the end of act 1, the hero's situation has gone from neutral to bad. At the end of act 2, it's gone from bad to worse. And by the end of act 2, their flaws are really coming out. You really might dislike this character, but you see that things are starting to happen and develop inside of them. But at the top of act 3, that's the turning point. That's where all of the misunderstandings, miscommunications, the aha moments start happening for your hero. And suddenly as the viewer, you are rooting for her. And so I think of life that way now and everyone's journeys. And I always feel every woman deserves her act 3. And when you are in your act 3, Mutita, you know it, because that's contentment. You haven't necessarily gotten to the end of that journey, but just the insights, the aha moments, and that clarity you feel, that's where the contentment starts coming in. And everyone is starting to root for you to get to the end, to get to your journey's end. So if every one of us believes that the other woman deserves her act 3, then I think we're all going to be rooting for each other, no matter if you are on a different journey than I am. So there's no more groupthink. Mutita's going to go pursue her journey to scale mountains. I'm going to pursue my journey to start a family. But both of us are in our act 3 and we know how good that feels. So we want that for everyone else. I truly believe that because I'm experiencing that. And there's not just one journey. I'm on, that's the beauty of like a movie. It gets a sequel, there's a trilogy, there's a franchise, and every journey you're on, if you remind yourself, okay, there's going to be a turning point. There's going to be a worse turning point, but then things are going to turn around and I'm going to get to act 3. That makes every journey easier to accept as hard, but it also reminds you that people will root for you. you're developing, you're growing, and people will root for you because they're doing the same thing. And that's how I feel.
People will root for you. Yeah, I have never think about it that way. Because when I was younger, there is a question that I got asked when I worked too hard. You know, there was a time, like especially the time that when we are trying to get into the university and like
Yeah.
we were reading nonstop and like sleepless society and totally like get insomnia. That maybe like if many people can relate. I asked myself as well that question: why I work this hard for? Who I actually work this hard for? Am I doing this for myself? Am I really happy for that? Or I doing this for my family or like the society that would acknowledgement after I able to enter to the university that I was aiming for at that time, which I also got that, by the way. But you know, it was so hard that I was like crying almost every day. It's like I put all everything that I have. So it was like, do we have to do that? But then in the act 3 though, I think there was a point where I wasn't care anymore whether who else gonna think about it. I just gonna keep doing that regardless who can think. Because I just want it and that's all I have to focus. And
Yeah.
I just go with the flow. The rest is history then. Like whatever happens, I surrender to the outcome.
It seems like once we stopped, it's a harder journey for you when we think we're doing it for other people or for the validation of society. And I think that's the fear that we have as women too, is that we want to be accepted. We want to be part of the womanhood. But there's an irony to that, because sometimes if you stay part of the womanhood that currently the status quo, there's a lot of discontent. So you could be, in the trenches studying with your study groups. Everyone's miserable. Everyone's discontent. Everyone is going home and asking themselves, why am I doing this? Who am I doing this for? But at least you have a support system. At least you have a group where all of you feel the same. But imagine then, now you're saying you woke up one day and you're like, I just got to focus. I just got to do this for me. And whatever happens, happens. That might be a very hard attitude for other people to witness. They're looking at Mutita and they're saying, oh my gosh, how is she not as affected or not as stressed out or not as miserable as us? And then the jealousy, the comparisons, all of that starts. And then are you excommunicated from the group because your attitude is a lot more, you know what? It is what it is. And I'm just going to accept the situation and just do my best. And that is actually wrong, because we fear that that's what's going to happen because, the group's not going to keep me inside because now I have a different, more positive attitude than them. But like you said, if you're in your act 3, they're looking at you. They're like, oh, wow, that's rubbing off on me. That feels good. If Mutita is keeping us optimistic and positive, that's great. And when you say that, like the way you just talked about it, I was rooting for you. I was like, yeah, you go, girl. Like, good for you. And I think then you find your people too, because you're not doing it for validation, but suddenly there will be people that are rooting for you when you're in your act 3 that you didn't even know existed. And that's where you continue to find new friend groups and find new circles. And that's what I mean by contentment really opens, because you were content. You stopped. I'm not saying you were happy, but maybe you were content. Like, okay, I'm healthy. I'm a good family. I have the opportunity to get into a great university. Like, I'm content. So I'm just going to do what has to be done. And it's my choice. That contentment opens up so many doors, so many mindsets, so many friend groups.
Yeah, I have never thought about it that way. Thank you for opening my eyes on that. It brings me to the next point though. Okay, let's talk in the case that we're able to shift the perspective that, okay, we could content in where we are. But there's a things that like right now is a trend, like sympathy, empathy, and compassion that people are still confused about, because we still living in a society, right? And like in case anyone's still confused, like sympathy is something that I feel for you. Like whatever you feel, I feel for you. That is something that I don't know what you feel, but I assume that this is what you feel. So I just feel for you without asking what you are feeling. But empathy means I feel with you. So I feel with you. I'm with you, whatever, how you feel. So, but there is always a good and a bad in the situation though. But compassion, it means that I am moved by you. So these things are the level of like empathy that we still have to care, right? The word care. People around us somehow
I could be a person that very independent, or maybe in another word, I'm pretty close. Like I'm not that
Uh-huh.
open. Yeah.
Okay.
Not really introvert, but like I'm not really like open to talk to many people. I have a very close group of friends, something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it would be in that way more. But it's kind of funny. But like I kind of get the way that when you mention that, hey, people usually misunderstand me, that why am I thinking optimistic, but actually I act like I don't care. But actually I don't care because I just surrender to the outcome already. But I just have to
Yeah.
do what I have to do because I am
Yeah.
content at that point. So what about caring in especially women's society, which is
Yeah.
involve jealousy, involve hierarchy, even
Yeah.
seniority in many countries. It's crazy if no one knows about this. Like it's regarding good culture and also family standard. Like these are so details and very sensitive topics though.
Yeah.
How would you go around this thing?
Yeah, and thank you for sharing all of that. So much of what you were saying was resonating. I think you were saying, you're more guarded, so you have your close friends, and that's. But being guarded and having a close group of friends doesn't inhibit us from exercising empathy. I think overall, doesn't matter who you are, if you are guarded, if you are introvert or you're extrovert, if you are mean, if you are nice, if it doesn't matter what kind of character traits you have, I think empathy is a paradox. And I don't think we talk about that enough, that we throw the word around so easily as a society. Please be empathetic, show some empathy. And like, it's very hard to do that because empathy is a paradox. And you nailed it when you were doing those definitions. That empathy means I know what you are feeling and I feel for you because I know what you are feeling. I feel it because I know what you're going through. I will never, ever be able to live a day in the life of Mutita. Empathy is asking of individuals, put yourself in the shoes of someone else so that you can feel for them. But that is impossible. I will never live a day in the life of someone else. I will only live a day in the life of NoorJehan. So I actually think, Mutita, we have to give each other grace when we say be empathetic. If someone is having a hard time being empathetic, don't judge that person and immediately think of them as a jerk or an awful human being. Show them some grace because they actually don't know what it's like to live this other person's life. And I think instead it's like we jump into cancel culture. That person they're not empathetic at all. You know what? Maybe we all need to give each other grace because it takes some time to be empathetic. And also, I might have never had a shared experience with you. So I might give you my sympathy. But at the end of the day, humans are self-centered, and that's why empathy is hard for us. But being self-centered also means humans are driven by ego. We don't like sympathy. Sympathy equals pity. We don't like that. And that's all I can offer you if I don't know what you're going through, if I've never experienced it fully for myself. So when I think about but everyone will tell me, well, empathy, so if someone's not empathetic, like, how can I think of them as a good person? Give each other grace. And that's where the beauty of storytelling comes in. Storytelling is something then we create these characters and we all relate to them because of some circumstances that feel analogous to our lives. And that is where we are cultivating. I love how you said sympathy, empathy, compassion. That's how we cultivate compassion. So someone might have a hard time being empathetic, but that doesn't mean they're not a compassionate person. Through storytelling, through sharing, through insights, through painting these journeys that like other people have gone on and continuing to talk and communicate and exchange stories, what we're doing is cultivating compassion amongst one another. And that's why books never go out of style. That's why you have classics. It does not matter how old they get, but you and I are very different, but we could share a love for the same book. We're cultivating compassion between one another. So it's okay. I don't think it's a bad thing if someone tells me, you're not being empathetic in this situation. But if someone says you're not being compassionate, that's a problem.
Another thing that I see a lot of ladies out there having issue with is about setting boundaries and overthinking. Me myself is one of the person I used, well, I kind of still be, but I used to be a control freak, like a really bad control
Same.
freak person.
Same.
But I'm getting better. Like I'm getting better. I'm saying this. I'm getting better. So I know that this day, like when we see some red flag, we have to draw the boundary. Especially talking to clients, I have to say that like right away. This is something that I cannot stand with. Like I'm just like, oh, can we negotiate on that or something? Like I'm gonna say it right away. I'm not gonna keep it to
Yeah.
myself. I'm gonna say it right away. So
Love it.
boundary setting is something that is not being taught in school. Even parents not teaching us actually, like how can we helping ourselves not to be burned out or something that like helping us going through things. And it could also lead us to like feeling not being loved, feeling like not being content with ourselves because of that, because being not accepted by other people, let's say.
Yeah.
What do you think about this topic?
As you're asking this question, I realized I didn't answer properly the question about the female friendships and empathy and
Okay.
sympathy, those dynamics. But this is a great segue into that too, about boundary setting. And, I think it's like not caring is very different from detachment, right? Like not caring and being apathetic or, indifferent. So boundary setting to me is, some of it is like detachment. Doesn't mean I'm indifferent. Doesn't mean I'm not human or not caring or that I'm apathetic. It's just like detachment is actually very healthy for us, because it can take emotions out of things and help us be more productive. So sometimes I have to remind myself, okay, this might not be the most pleasant work experience, but I don't have a choice. I have to do it, right? Sometimes I can't set a boundary at work. You can't set boundaries sometimes, right? You have to deal with uncomfortable situations. So I detach. This isn't about how I feel my personal life. This isn't about emotions. I just need to get this work done and focus on this and be productive. Let's get this done so then I can move on to the next thing. And I don't think that's a bad thing to detach, because it actually helps you be more productive. And the boundary setting in personal life, I do, and I know what you were talking about with the hierarchies and the status and whatnot between female friends. And I think it all starts mattering more as we get older, because it goes back to discontent. This idea of like, when we all were little girls growing up together, there was no difference. It didn't matter if, you came from a better family than I did, and we all just grew up together and had fun, and you played in the same sandbox. But as you get older, we start looking for validation when we are feeling discontent. And I'm just speaking from experience of like, okay, well, I didn't go pursue my dreams of being a screenwriter. Okay, well, I'm going to seek validation by, I'm in a corporate job. I'm a slave to my laptop, but I make good money, so my validation will come from like the brands I wear. Good, but then that's fine if that's making me happy. But if it's making me judge other people or be mean to other people that don't have those brands, maybe I'm actually jealous because they're going and living their life full of freedom and getting to travel the world because they chose a different path than I did. That's creating these hierarchies and status and whatnot. And I feel that is all stemming from the discontent. So I have to remind myself that if I meet women like that, or if there's been friendships that have evolved into that, you have to set those boundaries. Because once you've experienced, and I think you've said that, once you experience contentment, you protect it. You have to protect it. And that means boundary setting with other women. So I know they say kill them with kindness is always a path, but if I sense in other women a change or a shift, I don't try harder. I stay neutral. And I know if I sense a shift, I give them their space, because at the end of the day, this whole idea of contentment being our birthright, it's our rite of passage. It doesn't stick until we're all feeling content, because society has normalized the discontent. So if you are experiencing that and other people go, oh, she seems so unbothered, I stick to my guns and I say, I will just be neutral, because I have to protect this. I'm not going to get through my business goals, my family goals, my personal goals if I go out of my way to try to win over someone who's now, shifted towards me. I don't know what it is about me that's making them feel differently. That's probably something, a journey they're going on in their life. But I know inside I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for them to get to the act 3. But until they get to their act 3, this friendship might be on pause. And that's okay. That's my boundary. And I like to surround myself by women who have experienced act 3 because and once we keep on gathering each other as a big group, we become the new cohort, and womanhood is all about that. So I think boundaries are really, really healthy. And, but when you set a boundary, stick to it, don't waver. So if, like I said, like when I sense a shift in someone, I back off a bit, or I back off from the friendship. I might text less, or, I won't text until they text me, something like that. But the next day, if there's like something really funny that I want to send, I ask myself, am I sending it to this person because I want them to like me, or I want them to go back to being nice to me and like all of that? Or am I sending it because I genuinely am sending it because this is how our, the foundation of our friendship. And if it's the former, I don't do it. I'm like, you know what? I set a boundary for a reason and stick to it until there's a big enough sign that it should shift.
I can relate to that very well. And if I noticed it's coming back in a loop, if it's going to be a same person that like not really change, and if that person hasn't go to act 3 just yet, they're gonna keep coming back to the loop if we not change after. If we have draw the boundary line already, that this is where we comfortable and we are rooting for ourselves, they're gonna keep trying to break it out. And we need to be very strong on that, everyone.
Yeah. I mean, we said you got one life. You have one life on this earth. So, I mean, you talk about that a lot on your podcast, and people are trying to figure it all out and prioritize. You talked about that, about how do you prioritize when people are trying to start their own business or in their 9 to 5, and how to break out. And I mean, if there's one thing to prioritize above anything else, it's your contentment. So I don't know. I think that's, again, when you read about those, there's so many articles about like women talking about how, the 40s are my best decade, or 50s are my best decade, or I love getting old because I don't care as much. Right. And it really does click. Now I'm like, oh, this is why women, society makes us fear getting older, but so many women are trying to speak out now. Like, no, I love getting older. I love being able to not care so much. But it's not that I don't care as like I'm a discompassionate person, but I love not caring what other people think, because the people that are rooting for me, I know who they are, and I'll meet more of them along the way, but I have one life, Matita. I cannot squander it or waste it on, the negative energy. And that's hard. That's very hard, because you lose friendships when you shift that mindset. But I think that the more important thing is to be compassionate. And when those people are in their act 3, you welcome them back with open arms and into your orbit, your energy. And then, I think that then leads to the happiness.
In case anyone want to follow you and want to follow more of your work and get inspired on your women empowerment, where can they find you then?
You could just find me on Instagram at NoorJehan Tort. That's my full name. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. And I hope people connect and reach out, and let's just share some good energy.
So everyone, in case you want to follow NoorJehan about this story, I think it's so interesting that like we get like women empowerment and someone who rooting for us. So I hope this episode inspired you in many ways, like how it inspired me, and I hope it's also inspired NoorJehan today as well. How we talking
Absolutely
today.
did.
It's very deep talk, and I feel like, oh, I have recharged my battery after a very long day of work already. So thank you so much for sharing this energetic and like a very high motive talk today to our Get Unstuck Nation today. So I hope you have a great day ahead.
Thank you so much, Matita. Thanks for having me on. So lovely. You're so wonderful. And it's a privilege to be speaking with you. Thanks.
I hope this episode inspires you wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey so that you can have your business that supports your lifestyle. Get a show note at getunstuckmethod.com/podcast. Review what we have learned together today and start implementing right now. See it by yourself. The result of your consistent action are worth it. You deserve the freedom to enjoy your life. Until the next episode, let's get unstuck.